You know I can't recall the day your dream became my life. I've lived an eternity with you by my side. You by my side. Like the sun and the moon I've seen, that your light reflects mine. And riding together we have conquered the skies. But for so long I failed to see the truth as I searched for a fantasy.
Hello, I'm Shane Schultz from Serenely Speaking, and this is the Arisen Strength Podcast. Folks, we do this show every Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time because we believe there are far too many dreams, talents, and capabilities that are being suppressed for whatever reason. Whether it be illness, injury, or life experiences, these situations have a way of finding us being robbed of what it is that makes us special and unique in this world, our passions. Here at Arisen Strength, we encourage people to pursue their passions and dreams in spite of the challenges that people face on a daily basis. How we do that is through a three-pillar concept. 1 is support, 2, empower, and 3, after all that work, we have the right to celebrate. Folks, that's the Arisen Strength concept. Our goal is to help bring back the passions of life back to people again. Tonight we're going to be talking about when life gets hard. But before we do that, let me introduce you to my great friend, Wayne the Hack Hacker. Wayne, it's great to have you here tonight.
Thanks a lot for having me here tonight, Shane. This is really looking forward to talking about this topic. Of course, every week we say the same thing. I'm always looking forward to talking about topics because I enjoy talking so much, believe it or not. And but this is a good one. Yeah, when life gets hard, I think we've all been there. I think we all know somebody who's been there, and maybe this is a good topic.
Yeah, and it's funny how you say, that we like to talk a lot, because this show just basically was brought to the public of our everyday conversations that we used to have, and we realized that maybe some people might find it compelling, and little did we know that Arisen Strength was going to be born. Tonight's cast is Wayne and myself, and we have Christina in the interactive studio on the Chatsy room. The Chatsy room is a lot of fun, and we decided between Wayne and myself that we're going to do a new format when it comes to the Arisen Strength podcast. Wayne, why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Well, up till now, we've actually been broadcasting the show live and inviting people into the chat room during the live broadcast, and they can watch it through an embedded YouTube video through Google Hangouts running, and then and that goes right to YouTube, and then we embed that YouTube into Chatsy, and then with the live video going on right there. And then, of course, we have our chat room host, Christina, in the room there to talk with the people, just for a lot of reasons. But for one important reason, we'd like to be in the chat room, too, when the show is sort of being broadcast live. Right. So what we're going to do is we're going to air the show Sunday nights at 8, and Thursday night, the recap show at 8. But we're actually, full disclosure here, we're taping in advance. We're going to talk as though it's Sunday night because it does feel like Sunday night sometimes. But this is Saturday afternoon at the moment, and later on we may be taping 3, 4, 5 days in advance. But we're going to. The reason for that is we want to be able to show the show live, and then be live in the chat room with everybody, and watch the show together.
Yeah, I the way that I envisioned the show, I thought that the live aspect of it was going to be compelling. It was going to be one that was going to have a lot of interaction, where people could call in and so forth. But because of technology issues and so forth, we weren't able to get that done just yet. And so we're going to go a different route. I think it's going to be a better quality product that we're going to be putting out. And again, like we talked about, now we're going to be free to be in the studio, the interactive studio, with everybody else that's watching the show, so that they can ask any questions that they might have regards to the show, and we can have fun, chatting with our audience out there. Kind of more of a one-on-one type of thing, or a personal touch that I like to do when it comes to this particular show and the group that's associated with it, which is the Arisen Strength family. So, so I think it's going to be a better product, and I definitely think it's going to create a better interactive part along with the audience.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
So tonight we're going to be talking about when life gets hard. But before we do that, we introduced last week the 3 points of foundation. And, we have our 3-pillar concept of support, empower, and celebration. But we also have the 3 points of foundation. We actually introduced that last week, but we've been talking about it all along. It's not anything new to us. The 3 points of foundation being self-esteem, turning the thought, and then acceptance. And there's a reason why we did that progression. And I think that we did it pretty well to where we were able to strategically have a progression of being able to carry our audience through our show to learn, to be empowered, and to be able to now apply what it is that we brought into the show. Because self-esteem itself, it's something that's necessary. You got to really work at it when you're dealing with different struggles and challenges that are out there. Then you've got turning the thought. You have to have the foundation of self-esteem to be able to have the power to be able to turn the thought. And then realizing the results of turning the thought brings us to acceptance, and then you just go up another level.
Yeah, that's right. They do go well together. They're like you say, they're the 3 foundations for making these changes in our lives. And it's not just for people who are recovering. This is from an addiction. This is not just for people who are victims of or survivors of domestic abuse.
Nope.
Arisen thought and these 3 foundations can apply to anybody who's looking for arisen strength, no matter, as you like to say, Shane. Who does this apply to?
Well, we specialize in anybody who has any illness, injury, or life experiences that affect them.
And that's, I'm sure all of us can find ourselves in one of those categories, because we've all been through stuff, and we need to get back to our true self, or express our true self for the first time. And it's deep inside. This is the thing of arisen strength. It's not something you give us. It's not something that we give the audience. This is something that wells up from the deepest part of you, whatever is sort of that most important part of you.
Right.
Wherever when people talk about higher power, straight from the hand of Jesus. It can come from God. It can come from the universe speaking to you. But there's some part of you where this stuff has to well up from, and it's not going to be coming from us on this show talking to you.
No, this show is just to be able to bring awareness to the fact that what it is that people might not realize that they've stopped utilizing in their lives. A lot of people talk about examples when it comes to children. Children have amazing capabilities of being able to turn the thought, to be able to move on from tough situations, being able to handle situations even better than what adults do, because they have that innocence within them. They have that passion that's instilled within them, and then they utilize it freely, and that's what really makes it amazing. And I can take that personally from my experience when I was taking chemotherapy. There were a number of children that were there that were very young, anywhere between 4 and 8 years old. They were handling the chemotherapy and the whole concept of everything a lot better than what the adults were, including myself. And I was trying to be strong about it, but they were doing more than just being strong. They were living. They were playing. You know what I mean? They were joking around. They were some of the boys, they were hitting on the nurses. It was just, they were getting all the attention that they wanted to do, and they were living it up, and even knowing that the very tough situation that they were in.
We talked a lot about depression and mental illness on here because we share a lot of our personal stories. And I think that's where
Sure.
a lot of this Arisen Strength comes from. Is we're showing you how in our lives we've managed to find some bit of Arisen Strength, or we point out in our lives where we would like to find some more
Sure.
Arisen Strength, because we're not perfect.
Right.
You know, it's all about progress. It's not about perfection. We've struggled with self-esteem. We've struggled with acceptance. We've struggled with turning the thought.
Absolutely.
We share those struggles because we want you to be able to see those in your life too, because if you can reach that level of awareness where your self-esteem is getting you in trouble, where your level of acceptance is getting you in trouble, sometimes our inability to turn our thoughts. You know, I'm all out of ideas and I can't think of anything else to do. Everything I do turns out the same way. Those are flags that you need to turn the thought. Things like that, we try to share our experiences so that, you know, hopefully you can see that again in your life. And these young children in the hospital, they haven't had to learn hopelessness yet. They haven't been silenced yet in their lives.
Right.
A lot of this struggle comes from in our lives because of either illness, life experience, or just mental illness or other, you know,
Or injury.
Mm-hmm. We end up feeling silenced. We end up feeling hopeless. We lose our purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah. Children have, I don't know what's in their mind, but they got purpose.
Yeah.
Those kids, whatever, when you watch kids, they're doing something.
Well, they simplify things. You know, I mean, they simplify things. It's like, look, I want to play. Period. You know, I don't care whether you want to play or not. I would like you to play, but if you don't want to play, I can do it on my own, type of thing. You know, they're very driven. They're very focused on what it is that they want to get done. And you know, it's like when it comes to these situations, you know, when people would look at me from the outside looking in, I looked as if I was successful in doing the things that I was doing. Especially when it came to work and so forth. So like you mentioned, it doesn't necessarily require somebody to have an injury. It doesn't necessarily require somebody to have an illness in order to utilize Arisen Strength to go up another level. And you know, but you really never know what somebody is going through unless if you know that person and they let you in on it. The richest person in the world, you know, can be depressed. The richest person in the world can have life experiences they don't talk about, but it haunts them on the inside, and it still limits them to a point. You know, look at Robin Williams. You know, Robin Williams is an amazing actor, comedian, had all the talent in the world, had all the capabilities, was very giving. He was very philanthropic. It looked like he was impassioned with life. And everybody really thought that was the case. And then comes to find out, you know, there was a lot of different stories that were going on. It wasn't a secret. And a matter of fact, I think you'll remember that I put it on Facebook. You know, this when he passed away, I said this was a surprise to everyone but him, you know, because he knew what he was going through, and so did a number of other people, but they really didn't know how to handle it, and neither did he at the time. So that's why we decided to bring it along the progression tonight. Tonight's show is going to be talking about when life gets hard, and you know, we need to utilize those 3 points of foundation of Arisen Strength in order to be able to work on when life gets hard. You know, life gets hard when it comes to be economically. You know, whether or not your finances aren't working as well. Some of the richest people in the world right now are panicking right now because the stock market is not doing well at this time. You know, plus situation with just the average person, you know, the check just doesn't extend as far as what it used to back in the day, and it never extends enough. So, Then you have negative bias when it comes to society in itself. We have situations as to where, we talked about it in shows beforehand, that there's a negative bias in this world. And whether it be our language, whether it be our actions, our jealousies, our inadequacies, our insecurities, that definitely creates a type of a negative bias that's out there. And it's a tough world. It's a real tough world. People don't necessarily want to see somebody succeed over them. So they're going to do everything that they can in order to make you feel average and make you feel inadequate to what they're doing. Then you have other things where things that we don't have any control over. We have situations where, there's car accidents that are out there. There's passings that are out there that we never would have expected. There's situations as to where, you lose your job. You didn't know. I've had that situation as to where I lost my job, and I thought I was going to be having a career for a very long time. Friendships, for whatever reason, they turn on a dime. Just from one conversation, and they go from being best friends to the worst enemies, for a period of time. So there's a lot of different things that are out there that we can't control. But the thing is that we do have to find a way in order to press on and find a way in order to make life, still worth living for ourselves.
Yeah, you hit on a lot of really good points there. I think economics is the one a lot of people think of when they think of life gets hard. Whether I have a hard life, it's the song from Annie. It's a hard luck life. Hard knock life.
Hard knock life.
That's one that definitely jumps to mind, and I think a lot of us have felt that in our lives, where either we're not making as much money as we want to, we're not making as much money as we used to. Sometimes we're just plain not making enough money. So,
right.
How hard life can really, that's what it can speak to is economics. But again, we can be using some of the tools of turn the thought. Well, acceptance is one of these, is a great tool to use here.
Right.
Because whatever your economic situation is, the first thing to do is be realistic about how much money you have coming in.
Yep.
And how much money you have going out. That's what we talk when we talk about acceptance. It's not about liking, it's not about condoning, it's not about being good. It's about being honest. It's accepting the reality.
Sure.
And the reality of your economics is going to be based on two numbers, essentially. How much is coming in and how much is going out. And having an accurate assessment of those two numbers is sort of that first step. And then there's turn the thought comes into, do I really need the things that I'm spending money on?
Right.
Because sometimes I can't afford to live this way. My expenses are way too high. And we get stuck in this one thought where we don't think of the other thing that says, I can think about this differently. One, I don't have to have as many things as I do. I don't need to be buying as many things as I'm buying. I don't need to be paying as many things as I'm paying for. I don't need to drive as big a car maybe as I'm driving. I can actually start freeing myself a little bit from a lot of my obligations, past obligations or felt like obligations, and getting down sort of to the essentials of life. And I'll find that even making the same amount of money, I can be happier because there's less stress associated with that.
Sure.
Money coming in, money going out,
Sure.
because I'm controlling the money going out. And I can start worrying about, the best things in life are free, they say. I don't know if that's true or not. It seems like it should be. The best things in life are free, believe it or not. But there's a lot of things in life that are free that are pretty good too. It's not just not just things like love and friendship, that's what this is referring to. Best things in life are free. But there's other things that you can do
Sure.
that are very economical. And so you can start attacking, and that gets into also the negative bias. When you have that negative attitude, and then you start seeing so much negativity around you, this is the law of attraction. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
When you get yourself into a negative frame of mind, humans, we seek to confirm our bias. If I'm in a bad mood, I look for things to prove that my bad mood is justified.
To validate it, yeah.
I'm always trying to validate my own feelings. That's just what we do as humans. And if I'm in a good mood, believe it or not, I start seeing the good when I'm in a good mood.
Mm-hmm.
It's, that negative is still there. It still creeps in. You've talked about it before, Shane. 10-1.
Yeah.
I have to see 10 good things because to equal the one negative thing that I'm seeing. So I better be looking for a lot of good things. I have to look for the positive. Well, one way to look for the positive is just to put the positive spin on things. You can't get that positive spin started if you're already in this negative frame of mind that in this case is being driven by economics. So by reducing your financial obligations, simplifying your life, you free up some stress there. Exhale. Start going to free concerts, going to free movies, museums, walk in the park.
Call friends.
Yeah. Jogging. Whatever it takes to get outside, to do something. You say, oh, now I start feeling a little better. Now the better I feel, the more positive things I see, the more positive things I think, the better I feel. And those are all things that are within your control.
Right.
Which, as the third part, was the things that are out of our control. So much about makes our life hard are things that are beyond our control. And if you, like Shane and I, you've been through a 12-step room, you're familiar with the Serenity Prayer, and there's really 3 points to the Serenity Prayer. You divide the world up into the things you can control, the things you can't control, and then knowing the difference. Right. And that's a level of acceptance there. I have to accept what I can control. I have to accept what I can't control. And then there's maybe in the turning of the thought, there's this level of I have to be able to think about things in the past that I thought were in my control. I have to start thinking them not in my control. Things that I thought were out of my control, I have to take ownership of those. I have to learn those differences. But once I can learn the differences between what I can control and what I can't control, it's a simplification thing. The stuff I can't control, I can't let that bring me down because I can't control it.
Plus, what you're also doing is you're highlighting the things that you can control.
Yeah.
One of the things that I learned over time with my illness and my condition, is that there were some things that I couldn't control, but I could control a number of things. I could control what doctor I was going to trust my situation with. There are, yes, people are going to tell me, well, there's insurances and everything. There definitely is. But at the same time, you can take ownership, like we were talking about, is taking ownership and learning about what it is that you're suffering from, learn about what it is that you're struggling from. And I know that a lot of my members in the Arisen Strength family, I know that they do that. They do learn about what it is that they're struggling and challenged with. And then they go to different doctors, and there's a lot of doctors that don't work out for whatever reason. And sometimes it's a persistence thing. It's just how bad do you want to feel better? And don't take no for an answer. Just because there are people, just because your friends tell you, or your family tells you, or somebody out in the street tells you, that this doctor is the best for this. If it doesn't work out for you, then they're not the best for you, and that's what matters. And again, you want to be open to change, and you want to be open to being able to get things better. But at the same time, you want to take ownership, and you want to take validation of how it is that you feel. And don't take no for an answer for getting better, because you're worth it. And that's where I think gets lost. I think just like our passions, our dreams, talents, and capabilities, well, our value gets lost when we're being so limited into feeling the way that we feel and thinking the way that we think.
Yeah, and it's when you can do that, when you can separate what you can control and what you can't control, and then when you learn, as with self-esteem comes this ability to not take no for an answer. At least don't take no as the first answer.
Right.
Part of not being able to control things, sometimes you have to take no for an answer, because sometimes the answer is no. When you don't know, take no, you can look a little deeper and do that sort of deep dive, and don't get wrapped up in fair or unfair. I think that's what I'd like to hear you talk a little bit about.
Well, that's definitely a big thing, because fair or unfair, that can really limit somebody. That can put somebody into a corner or just absolutely paralyze you. Some people out there, they have chronic illness, they have chronic pain, and we're going to talk about that a little later on in the show. It's not fair. It's not fair what people go through. It's not something that anybody would expect to be fair. Unfortunately, those things do happen to us, and it's consuming if you're sitting there and you're trying to validate whether or not that it's fair or not, because it's to the point like we deal with addiction. It's not fair that I deal with addiction. I did everything in my power that was possible not to have a life of addiction. I did everything that was possible. I'm very resentful when it comes to the fact that I have addiction. I really am.
Well,
but
you managed to avoid the cigarette addiction.
Yeah.
You managed to avoid the drinking addiction. You managed to avoid the drugging addiction.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty good. You did great managing to avoid being an addict.
Oh, absolutely, until I met gambling. And I had no idea that something that was socially acceptable as a football card, was going to introduce me into the life that damn well killed me, numerous times over, as to where it made my life torture in a lot of different ways, and people didn't even know it in for the most part, until it got even worse than what I thought it could ever get. So, and it's not fair, it's not, but it is what it is, and I hate that statement. I hate that statement.
I already like it.
Yeah.
This is exactly one of these flags. It's not fair. That phrase is one of those flags in our lives which we need to pay attention when we say it, when we use it, when we think it. Yeah. We want to call our own personal attention to it. Say, why am I making this an issue about fair or unfair? Because at the end of the day, like you said, it is what it is. Whether something is fair or unfair, at the end of the day, is irrelevant.
Right.
You have needs that need to be met. You need to get those needs met. So you have to be assertive. You have to be effective in your communication. That's not fair or unfair. These are things that happen. So the fair or unfair, all that does is that drags you back into that negative bias that we were talking about before.
Sure.
If you're constantly worried about whether something was unfair to you, that negative attitude is going to keep you observing, picking out negative things in your life, and you're going to focus on those negative things because that's what your attention is being drawn to. So you're going to put your focus there, and you're going to come across as a negative person.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you try to get your needs met, the person who you're asking for help, the person who's offering the help, the people that you're encountering, they're going to be trying to help a negative person. If you've ever tried to help a negative person, it's not the most fun, and you better be being paid a lot of money to do it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you won't do it at all.
Yeah.
And even if you are being paid well to do it, you're not going to like doing it. So a lot of times when we're in a negative mood and we're trying to get help, we feel like the other people are not helping us. They're not doing their best. They're not doing everything they can. And a lot of that could be perception. A lot of it is presentation. A lot of it goes back to maybe it started when I was being all wrapped up in fair and unfair rather than in my control, out of my control. Let me be assertive. Let me communicate effectively.
Sure.
Let me deal with acceptance, accept the situation for what it is, and then move forward.
Yeah, instead of a hurdle, it becomes a wall.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way I look at it, is that, is it fair? No, it's not fair. But, that's a hurdle, and when you realize that you can still do things, to make your life better. If you sit there and say, it's not fair, and constantly trying to validate what it is that you're feeling on the inside, that's when it becomes a wall. And that's when you start encasing yourself into that spot that starts making life a heck of a lot more challenging, a heck of a lot more suffering than what it really should be, for yourself. And I know that I don't normally use the word should, but when it comes to us putting ourselves into that box, we don't have to, and that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to educate people on how not to do that. Unfortunately, I've been talking to a person over this past 2 weeks or so, who has had some terrible things happen to them, and they are very much stuck on the fact of fair and unfair, and it's paralyzing to them, to the point as to where there's a point in time as to where some people will get to that decision time whether or not that life is worth living, and then it kind of like they kind of feel that they're validating their situation, their feelings, and thinking that that's okay. I know, because I did.
There's this expression that I've heard, and it just made me think of it. This topic makes me think of it. It's along the lines of life is what happens while you're making plans.
Yeah.
And this kind of makes me think of this. With fair or unfair, if that's what you're focusing on,
right,
whether things are fair or unfair, life is still happening.
Right.
And if you're paying attention to what's fair and unfair, whether a situation is fair or unfair, other situations are evolving.
Sure.
Other things are coming at you. And while you're focused on this, you could end up getting what? Blindsided by something you didn't expect.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I've had that personal experience myself, with my good friend Ronnie. He was my best friend, and we were helping each other, with our situation, with our depression, and we were the same age. We had a lot of passions that we had together. You couldn't stand being around us because we would pick you apart when it comes to humor. Nobody was, we didn't care. We were not prejudiced in any way. We busted on everybody. And he was helping me. And then all of a sudden there was a tragic incident to where, unfortunately, Ronnie passed away. And it was one of those things as to where he was a God-loving individual. I say God-loving, not fearing. So he was a person that would sit there and tell you about his faith and so forth. So it didn't really seem as if it was fair. It really didn't seem. And that's what some people get hung up on is, well, if there's a God up there, then why did this happen to me? If you really believe that there's some sort of Jesus or some sort of higher power that's out there to help me, then why did they let this happen? And it's very easy to get into that and not be able to, see past it and see to the point as to where you can move forward and move on, while realizing that it is what it is. It happened. That's life. It does happen. The bad things do happen in life. For those who are sitting there and saying, well, I was taken advantage of and something happened to me because of another person, and then sitting there and saying, why did God let this happen to me? God didn't let it happen. The person that did it to you let it happen. That's the reality of the situation. We talk about reality versus perception. Perception is that if there's some sort of spirit or spiritual situation, higher power that's out there, then they should protect me. The reality is that they love you, but there is a thing called free will, and that free will is based off of what others do. And so if somebody sits there and they rape you, or if they sit there and they take advantage of you, or they hurt you, or they, whatever reason, then it's on them. And that's the reality of the situation. And to make it so allows it to be a hurdle to say, yes, that's happened. And we talked about acceptance. Yes, that person did this. And yes, it affected me. No, it didn't end me. And so we can move on. And it's not easy by any means. It's not something that's easy to deal with. but it's necessary to get by so that we can find our passions in life that make us special and unique again.
And it just, to be clear, because I don't think you sent this message, and I surely know you didn't intend to, and I hope nobody heard this. When you get blindsided by one of life's tragedies, acceptance doesn't mean you don't get to grieve.
Oh,
right?
good Lord.
Something happens, you don't just say, oh, it happens, lost my best friend, let me move on.
No.
Acceptance is, sometimes it has that very cold sound to it. Definitely have to grieve life's events. Things happen to us. We have to process those events. We have to come to terms with them, and we have to do it in our own time and in our own way. The acceptance part is we have to accept that it did happen, because at some point, on some level, life is going to go on. Whether you choose to let it go on or not, you can do your best to fight it, but other people's lives are going to be going on. You can choose what to do with your life, so that even if you are grieving for 2, 3, 5 years, 6 years, the rest of your life, don't necessarily expect that everybody else is going to. And that's part of this acceptance, is like, okay, I can accept that this happened in the sense that other people have to deal with it their way. I have to deal with it my way. So, we're all kind of on our own journeys. We're all having to deal with things in our own way. But we all do really need to accept the things that happen to us, in the sense of we have to try and fight that distorted thinking about the events. We have to make sure that we understand what the events were that occurred, so then we can process it a little bit more honestly. We can kind of, get sort of more genuine feelings. We can really, make sure that we're not spending our time spinning our wheels, or, worrying about things that are out of our control, or, neglecting things that are in our control. We have to, all those things come into play, and especially when we're blindsided, we have to really kind of, taking advantage of our supports, because
Sure.
You're reeling.
Well, I'll give you an example. You talk about grieving, and we're going to have a show in regards to grieving, by the way, because I think it's necessary. But I'll give you an example. A good friend of mine, as when I was younger, her mother had passed away on Christmas, and so that can bring up a whole lot of resentment. Whether it be the fact that I'm not going to celebrate Christmas now, I can't celebrate the holidays. It's got the spiritual part of it, God and Jesus and so forth in regards to that holiday. Why did that happen? And everything in that sense. There's a whole lot that can happen in that sense. And what I was, when I talked to her, I gave her some thought, and the thought was, why don't we do this? Why don't we take control and empowerment of your grief? In other words, let's not make it, you don't have to grieve on the day that she passed. You can grieve a week beforehand. And so, you have that power. You have that ability to do those things. She took my advice. And what it is that what I told her is that go ahead and throughout this week, give yourself the time to grieve openly, totally. Give it everything that you've got. Then set a time and then say, okay, I'm not forgetting the situation, but I'm going to move on and do something else. And then the next day, openly grieve. It's just an example. It's not. I'm not saying to do this all the time. It's just an example, because my thought process is that the mother certainly doesn't want her child not to ever celebrate Christmas again, because that used to be a big thing for their family. So it's not a bad thing to grieve, in a controlled way beforehand.
Well, it's part of challenging ourselves, right? This is a big part of turning the thought, is we have to challenge what we've been doing in the past. We have to do things that we wouldn't necessarily think of on our own. Right. We have to be open to suggestions. We have to be willing to sort of give them a try, because real change in our lives is going to come from us really changing what we do. And a lot of times that real change, the suggestions have to kind of filter in from maybe outside. We have to ask a new question. We have to think about things in a way we've never thought about before. And they're not all going to be home runs. And there's going to be things that you're going to try and they're not necessarily going to work out. But we don't use that as an example of not to try. It's just another example of why you have to keep trying.
Absolutely.
I think of a story of Edison with the light bulb, and a reporter asking him, how did he tried 2,000 different filaments before he hit on the magnesium strip that he ended up with. And the reporter asked him, how did it feel to have to fail 2,000 times in a row? And Edison's reply was, I did not fail 2,000 times in a row. I learned 2,000 ways not to make a light bulb.
Yeah. And that's turning the thought, because it's taking the negativity away from all that work that didn't work out, but it got him closer and closer to making that light bulb. And now look at what happened here. I mean, because of his efforts, look what we've got.
He kept moving. He tried something, it didn't work. He didn't fixate on what didn't work. He kicked the can.
Yeah.
He focused on what did work by looking for something new. What was working here was look for something until you find one that works. And if somebody who's having to deal with grieving at a major holiday like that, that's a lot going on there.
Sure.
And as you said, the mother wouldn't want Christmas to be ruined forever.
Right.
And that's a hard thing as a survivor to kind of really accept that. But you have to, be able to say, you know what, I'm going to have to try extra hard, which means I have to try things maybe that I wouldn't try on my own. So maybe I have to take some suggestions. I have to try something.
Or at least be open to it.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing, is that when you have to be open to change in order to get better, to make things better. The reason why we're in the way that we are is because of the conditioning and the pattern of things. It's like we talked about last week. If you're going through page after page after page of a book and going through the same story, you're going to be very familiar with that, and you're going to go through that entire story until the end. And Les Brown, a motivational speaker, he says that some of the most passionate people, the best dreams, the best ideas are in the cemetery that never were ever realized because people took it with them, or people got lost into their situations that led them there. So when it comes to being open to change for the better, it's just an example of how it might turn out better. I'm not saying that it did, but at that particular year it did, but who's to say what it's going to do down the road? But at least at that time it worked out better. That kind of reminds me of a story that's of my life that I can talk about. As I've mentioned before, I lived in homeless shelters. I've lived in 8 homeless shelters in my lifetime. There's, matter of fact, the one that I remember the most is the first one. The first time that I lived in a homeless shelter, and I'll tell you why. It wasn't because it was the first time. It wasn't because it was the first time that I was ever, outside of my own control or anything like that. It was because of a gentleman that I met when I was in the homeless shelter. His name was Lawrence, and I remember that name being very different, and I'm sure it's some derivative of Lawrence or something like that, but it was just the way that he said it, and he had this voice that was like a narrator's voice. It was like James Earl Jones type of style. Now I'll tell you why it is that I remember Lawrence. It wasn't because he was really dynamic or anything in that sense. It wasn't because of the color of his skin. It wasn't because he had only one eye, because he had lost an eye in a fight in South France, actually, in a back alley in France. So he had a black eye patch on. It wasn't because of the permanent limp that he has, because he fought in a war and he ended up having some sort of an injury that turned into a condition as to where he had a noticeable limp and he had a cane. And it wasn't even his voice. What it was his dream. You see, Laurence didn't live here in the United States all his life. He lived many different places. He lived in England. He lived in France. He lived in Germany at some point in time. Laurence had a dream. And so his dream was to come over here to the United States for him to pursue what it is that his passion was. And so during the time that I'm at the homeless shelter, we would talk about a lot of different things. We would talk, a lot of different, we had time on our hands because we had to make our situation better, whether it be, to get situated with insurance and get situated with social services and everything like that. And while we were talking and we would walk, it happened to be during the winter, and he had a very difficult time walking around because of the snow and everything. We would talk about his dream, and his dream enlivened me, whether he knew it or not. And his dream was to open up a restaurant, and that restaurant was to be a custom order type of restaurant, to where there would always be the normal dinners that would go out during the evening, but for those who wanted to, you could order in a week in advance, and you could order anything that you wanted, whether it be top end, type of food or whatever it is that you wanted. He would be able to get it to you. So this was his dream, and so he was going to come over here. He wanted to do it in Connecticut, and so I listened to him. Now we're in a homeless shelter, and we're talking about dreams. Okay, that's really not a place where people would think about that. We could have very easily been consumed with where we were at, but he kept on talking about his dream. Well, I'll tell you the reason why I remember this. One was because of his dream. Another thing is that one night I was actually in bed and I was sleeping, and I had, as I was sleeping, two young men came and they assaulted me, both physically and sexually. Well, it was Laurence who took his cane and he slammed it onto the foot of the bed, and it scared the two young men, and the two young men ran away. You see, the moral of the story, the point of the story is, if Laurence didn't pursue his dream, in spite of the challenges that he faced, which he faced a number of them, he faced losing an eye, he faced being in a war, he faced an injury because of that war, he faced whatever things that I don't even know about, and he was in a homeless shelter, not knowing how it is that he was going to live from day to day to day. But he had a passion, he had a pursuance of his dream, and because of that pursuance of his dream, he was there that night, and I ended up being very fortunate for that. So we're going to close this up. I want to mention that coming soon, just like we utilized this past month or so in order to go over the foundation points of Arisen Strength, we're going to utilize another block of time, which is going to concern chronic conditions, whether it be chronic pain or illnesses. We're going to take on subjects like Lyme disease. We're going to take on subjects like lupus, Crohn's disease. We're also going to be continuing our discussion in regards to abuse. We weren't just going to leave it as just for domestic abuse. We have, it seems like we do things in threes, but there's also child abuse, and also for those who are pet lovers, of which I am, and so is Wayne. We also have pet abuse that we're going to discuss. So we have a number of things that we're going to be talking about. But this block of time that we're going to talk about chronic illness and conditions, I think is going to be something that's going to make it's going to make a difference for a lot of people that are out there. Speaking of making a difference in chronic issues, we're thinking about our good friend Charles. He is doing better than what it is that we would have expected. They actually were going to let him go home, and it turned out that they thought, well, the doctor thought better of it, and so he's going to stay underneath doctor's care for a little while longer. But I heard that he's a little bit ornery too, so he's getting back to normal. So I think that that's a great thing. So we're definitely thinking about you, Charles. Get better, and also his family, Chucky and his wife. Definitely get better. Because we're thinking about you. Monday nights, we're having a good time on Monday night, aren't we?
Yeah, we are doing Swinging Speaking Presents, Speaking to the Heart.
Yep.
This is on Blog Talk Radio, part of the Journey to the Night Network. Monday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern Time.
Yep.
With their interactive chat room they have there.
Yeah.
Come listen to Shane on audio and come chat with me in the chat room.
Yeah, he's a celebrity in the chat room. They all love Wayne. Meanwhile, I'm talking, and some of them are listening, and some of them are there to have fun. And either way, that's whatever it takes. It's a good time. It allows me to be able to take things a little bit differently as far as serenely speaking, to be able to be a little bit more motivating, a little bit empowering. Because it's a different type of audience that's out there, and like we talk about, not everybody has an illness, not everybody has an injury that they're challenged with. Everybody has life experiences, whether they realize it or not. But it's a different kind of audience that we can get out to. Next week's show is going to be talking about conditions and the illnesses that come from mold. And I know that there are people that are saying, "What in the world are you doing that show for?" Well, believe it or not, here in New York, there is quite a problem that's out here. There's a lot of things that are called these natural disasters and catastrophes that are out there, whether it be hurricanes or tornadoes or flooding and so forth. And as a result comes the condition of mold. Well, mold is not something to fool around with, and we're gonna explore that a little bit, and we're gonna bring awareness to some of the illnesses and the conditions that do come from that type of situation. And I'm doing it as a favor for some friends of ours that are in the Arisen Strength family. Kelly, I told you we would talk about this. And I think that it's something that needs to be brought awareness to, because I don't think many people know about it.
Oh yeah, and especially like I said, in New York, the snow piles up during the winter.
Yeah.
That thaws in the spring. Summers aren't exactly dry. It's damp here. When it's not frozen, it's damp.
Yeah.
And mold definitely is a daily, something we have to worry about a lot.
Well, we have hurricanes that come up the coast, and I forget the exact area, but I think it was Staten Island and so forth, as to where, it wiped out South New York, and even parts of Jersey and everything, and as a result, after cleaning it up and everything, after getting rid of all the water and everything that was going on, there's some leftover problems, and it's not something that we think about. And I know that in New Orleans, when the hurricane was there, I know that they had a significant problem in regards to mold, because, face it, water, dampness, whatever the case may be, it definitely leaves that situation. So it's something that we're going to talk about. We're going to bring awareness to, to help out our friends, and hopefully we'll have a show that's going to be impacting not only to those who suffer from illnesses or conditions from it, but also others outside of that, to be able to help maybe down the road in some sort of way. So that's what we're going to do next week. I want to say thank you. Wayne has been really working hard, and he always works hard, but he's working even more so to the different types of videos that we're doing and promotions that we're doing, and he's got it together in regards to opening credits and the ending credits. If you can, watch the ending credits for sure, because he really worked on being able to show where you can contact us, being able to see where our shows are going to be, whether it be Journey into the Light Network or whether it be in the Arisen Strength Interactive Studio, whatever. It's all in the ending credits, and I just want to say thanks for that.
Yeah, and you can enjoy the music from Derek Shawn, Angel,
yes,
playing while the credits roll. So we'll see you guys next week, Thursday in Chatsey.
Yep, Thursday in Chatsey, Monday on Blog Talk Radio. Thanks, everybody. Good night.
The sweetest moment of life I ever knew was when I opened my eyes and saw that you were my truth. Said, how did you know? How did you know you'd be my angel? When your wings were trapped into my heart. Where did you see? And where did you see that we would be wonderful? And our dreams would live where we are. How did you know that you'd be my angel? When your wings were trapped into my heart. Where did you see that we would be wonderful? And our dreams would live where we are. How did you know that you'd be my angel? When your wings were trapped into my heart. Where did you see that we would be wonderful? And our dreams would live where we are. How did you know that you'd be my angel? When your wings were trapped in my heart. Where did you see that we would be wonderful? And our dreams would live where we are. How did you know that you'd be my angel? When your wings were trapped in my heart. Where did you see that we would be wonderful? And our dreams would live where we are. How did you know that you'd be my angel? When your wings were trapped in my heart. Where did you see that we would be wonderful? And our dreams would live where we are.
Tonight, we're going to be talking about our show. Oh, boy, did that just escape me. What are we talking about?
You're doing an introduction.
No, what are we talking about? Oh, the life, how life gets hard.
Right the title. It's a big title. So note to self on outlines, put the title really big letters across the top.